Hello friends, welcome back. Welcome to the concepts of CISSP. We are discussing Domain 3 Security Architecture and Engineering. We are on the way in discussing Salzer and Schroeder's design principles. We have discussed a lot and there are 3 design principles which are left. I'll be covering these 3 design principles here. Just as a reminder, if you haven't subscribed my channel, please do so because this is one way you can support my work. If you find my content useful and you want to share with your fellow friends who are also preparing for CISSP. So let's discuss now the 3 remaining Salzer and Schroeder's design principle. One is psychological acceptability and there are 2 more which is derived from the world of physical security, which is work factor and compromise recording. So when it comes to psychological acceptability, as you can figure it out, psychological acceptability is about accepting the security controls by people who are going to use the system. The principle of psychological acceptability is also called the principle of least astonishment, right? So when we design a secure system or we design a secure process, we put security controls in it. Now these security controls ensure the overall security of the system. Now interestingly, these security controls are something which will be used by users as well. So the end users or the people who are going to be using the secure system will interact with these security controls. So our intent is to have a balanced set of security controls. There are 2 approaches. One is to have minimum security control, or we can make something which is having maximum security controls. So we don't want to fall into these extremes. We want to have a pragmatic approach where we have the bare minimum set of security which will provide the intended security level or intended baseline security level, right? That's meant by the balanced security control. The ideal approach will be a seamless integration which requires least user effort. So in an ideal sense or in a utopian sense, we want to design a system, a secure system where security controls are embedded in a way which is kind of transparent to the end user. The next 2 design principle, which is work factor and compromise recording, comes from the space of physical security. Work factor is basically an indication that how difficult it is for someone to compromise security of a system, right? Now this work factor refers to the degree of effort required to compromise the security, right? So how difficult it is to bypass the security or to attack some secure system, right? That's work factor. So when we talk of work factor, we think from the attacker's perspective that for an attacker, how much effort he will require in terms of time or in terms of money or in terms of resources to attack a system, plus how much benefit he will get out of the attack. So if the benefit of attack is very less than the effort he puts in, then this situation will actually give an indication that the attacker is not likely to attack the system, right? So from an attacker point of view, work factor explains like how costly is to defeat the security, first thing, and then it also gives an indication that what benefits can be obtained by the attack. So these 2 questions are answered by work factor, right? Secure system tends to increase the work factor to discourage attacks, right? So if the work factor is more, then attackers will be discouraged. One example is the cryptographic algorithms, right? So if you have the smaller key size, it means that you have a small work factor. It can be decrypted in a small time. But if you have big key size, then the effort required to decrypt a message using a cryptographic algorithm increasing the work factor, and that will discourage any attacker to attack the system, right? So if work factor is far greater than the benefit of the attack, this means that attack likelihood will decrease, and if attack likelihood will decrease, we can have the risk of the system or risk posed to the secure system categorized as low risk, right? Even if it means that the likelihood will decrease, this is not a guarantee that attack will not happen. Attack can happen even though the likelihood will decrease. So we have to always do due diligence and due care in doing the proper risk assessment of the system and putting countermeasures. Now let's look into compromise recording. Compromise recording is easy to understand. Basically, it means that whatever security compromise is happening, whatever security breach is happening in your environment, you are recording that security breach, right? So that is basically compromise recording. So if you are recording each and every breach happening in your organization, whether you are able to prevent it or not, that's a separate discussion. So whatever breach happens, if you are recording that breach and the details, it means that you are following the principle of compromise recording. Now, to understand compromise recording, let's recall few old terms which we have already discussed in domain 1. We already know what is asset. Asset is any tangible or intangible entity in your organization which is of value to you, right? So any asset has got some asset value. It depends on the importance it carries in the environment, right? It could be tangible asset, it could be intangible assets. Now with assets we have some vulnerability. Let's say that in this case there is a vulnerability X associated with the asset. Now with this asset vulnerability X, there is a possibility that X can be exploited, and this possibility, this probability is referred with the term exposure, right? Now with the exposure, what happens that there is a chance that there will be a threat agent which will intentionally exploit this vulnerability, right? So that is basically the threat agent. And what is threat? A threat is any potential action or inaction which can cause damage. So we should know these four things: asset vulnerability first, second exposure, then threat, and then threat agent. For every asset, we already know that in doing risk assessment, we do a pairing which is called asset threat pairing or asset vulnerability threat pairing. So this threat pairing is used in doing the risk assessment and doing the countermeasure selection and other things, in the whole overall risk management cycle. Now, when an attacker or a threat agent basically breaches the security, breach, by the term breach, we mean that the attack has been successful in compromising the security, right? So once the security is bypassed, you get an access into the system, you say that the breach is successful. Now, a successful breach do not mean that a vulnerability is exploited. Once the breach happens, then attacker tries to exploit the vulnerability in an asset, right? So an attack is defined as an intentional attempted exploitation of a vulnerability, right? So these are the two stages of security compromise. First, a breach happens. What is breach? Breach is basically the security is bypassed by a threat agent, by an attacker, right? And a breach is considered successful. Once a security perimeter is breached or bypassed, we say that the breach is successful. Now, once the breach is successful, then attacker tries to exploit the vulnerability, and this phase is called attack, right? Now we can look into this breach and attack time period. So if you look into the scale which I have shown here, like you have got B and A referring as B as breach and A as an attack, right? So you have got a time period between breach and attack. Now what happens? First breach happens, the security is bypassed, then attack happens, right? Now you can have different detection timing, D1, D2 and D3 in an ideal world, and we all tend to achieve this state that every breach is proactively detected, which is D1, referred as D1 here. But mostly what happens, it's not ideal in all the situations. In most of the time, which is common, that we get an alert or we get an attack incident or breach incident once the breach happens, right? So that is D2. And the D3 is a time where we have reactively discovered a breach when attack is in progress or when the attack has already happened, which is really bad. We should not be at the stage D3, right? Now this window is very important. This window breach attack window B2A is very important, and the overall objective of the compromise recording is to record any security breach or security compromise which has happened between these two windows. This compromise recording is common in situation where availability is of high importance, right? So in the case of shopping malls, you will see that you have got security guards, you have got like metal detector scanners and all those things. So you have those systems in place, and then you have security camera. So security camera is basically compromise recording, right? Even though you can rely on security guards and metal detector, but if there is a person who is being looked by police, or there is a criminal and authorities are looking for it, it may not be detected, right, by or by identified by security guards. So you have got security camera which can be used later on to detect someone's location, right? In the high available situations like cinema halls or airport or shopping malls, you use compromise recording, security principle basically, or you use compromise recording in situations where preventive controls are unlikely to be sufficient. Again, giving an example of a shopping mall security guards, they may miss some identification, or some person can change some look and they can enter into some building. So those kind of situation, if you have CCTV camera, you can later on use it as fact finding tool to find if that person was really there. So we use compromise recording so that if security is breached, the damage might be able to be contained, limited by prompt incident response, right? So even though if you don't prevent it, if the breach notification is sent to the incident management team, they can take prompt action. This is one use case of compromise recording. Second use case could be that the evidence of the perpetrator identity might be captured for later on if we want to use it for some fact finding, root cause analysis, or in legal proceedings as well, right? So this is all about compromise recording. I hope you like this video, and if you like this video, put a thumbs up. You can share this video with your fellow friends who are also preparing for CISSP. And for any comment and suggestions, please let me know in the comment section, and I wish best of luck for your CISSP exams. Subscribe to my channel to support my work. Thanks for watching.